The job of a professional motorbike rider is to get around the track as fast as possible. So have you ever wondered why pro riders almost never ride in a straight line? They're always trying to lean over at every possible moment. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why they do this. Doing something for no gain in motorsport is a big no-no.
No.
So there needs to be some very important reasons why riders always try to lean over. Well, there are in fact several reasons why they do this. Tyres, for example, have a huge part to play in the riding style. And you may be surprised to know that a bike's engine speed and RPM increases when the bike is leant over. Now that may sound like witchcraft, but it's a genuine thing. There's also benefits to the overall physics of the bike, which can help with wheeling and can help with traction. And professional riders even go as far as adjusting their technique to take full advantage of leaning over at every possible moment. Now I need to explain a few things first for context so that everything else makes sense later on in this video. Let's first quickly compare a bike tyre to a car tyre. Tyres are the only thing connecting the bike to the road, so the design of them needs to be specific to their needs. Looking at the two side by side, we can see immediately that a car's tyre is square compared to a bike's rounded tyre. This is to support a rider cornering. Cars don't lean the same way a bike does, so they don't need to be rounded. Car tyres also have a bigger contact patch with the road to support the additional weight. Even fully bespoke race cars like F1 weigh upwards of 800 kilos compared to a bike's 180 kilos. Things like compounds on both car and bike tyres can vary, but you also get different profiles on a bike tyre. Now what this means is more race-focused tyres have a more aggressive shape, a bit like a V, which minimises the contact patch when they're upright, but maximises the contact patch when they're leant over, which is where riders want to spend most of their time. Now with a more aggressive V-shaped profile tyre, the RPM and engine speed can change pretty drastically, and it's all to do with the diameter of the tyre at different points. With me so far? Let's take another look at the bike tyre. Notice the difference in diameter from the sidewall of the tyre to the centre or crown of the tyre. The more aggressive the profile, the bigger the difference is. So what does this actually mean? Well, let's break down an example. Here's Taylor Mackenzie at Donington Park on his BMW S1000RR. Let's take a look at the small straight between turn 7 and turn 8. Did you catch it? Let's play through it again, but we're going to slow it down. Have a look at the revs when Taylor goes from leaning over to the right to then switching to leaning to the left to set himself up for turn 8. The revs jump up from 12,000 RPM to 14,000 RPM when the bike is upright to leaning to the left. Now this isn't Taylor adding more throttle, it's the diameter of the tyres effectively becoming smaller as he leans over nearer the sidewall. A smaller tyre diameter means more revolutions of the tyre, which has a few benefits which we're going to touch on a little bit later. Now remember, we're trying to understand why a rider tries to spend as much time as possible leant over. So we're going to look at the entry phase of a corner, then the mid corner, then the exit phase, and then the following straight. So let's take a look at the entry phase first. The objective here is to maximise the contact patch to slow the bike down. The bigger the contact patch, the better the braking performance. When you brake, the front compresses and load is transferred over to the front. This deforms the tyre. But if we were to brake completely upright on a bike, the tyre will deform, but it won't be optimal. What you'll see instead is professional motorbike riders lean over ever so slightly, which adds some additional load onto the front suspension, which deforms the tyre a little bit more. And as we know, more contact equals better braking performance. Now riders will try to lean over, but not that much. If they lean over too aggressively, then they're going to actually start leaning into the corner, and that's going to cost them more time. So we've broken down the entry phase, but what about the middle phase? The middle phase of the corner takes into account the turning point up until just after the apex. A pro rider wants to get through this section as quickly as possible, maximising their mid-corner speed. As you've probably seen, a rider will simply lean into the corner, but if you take a closer look, you'll see their body position changes throughout the mid-corner phase. Let me explain. The lean is gradual on turn-in. They don't throw themselves down to the inside of the bike and try and hang off as quickly as they can. If they did, that will result in a rather unpleasant meet and greet with the tarmac. But when they want to start getting off the brakes and onto the throttle, you'll see them drop their entire body to the inside of the corner. They do this to lower the combined center of gravity of them and the bike, and this allows them to reduce the lean angle of the bike in this particular section. Not only does this reduce the risk of a crash on the exit, but it also reduces binding in the suspension. When the bike is leant over, the suspension can't travel up and down as easily. Reducing lean angle improves the efficiency of the suspension. Another benefit of this is by picking the bike up, they're able to again maximise the contact patch of the tyre to the road, giving them more grip. More grip means an earlier throttle application, which means more time gained. And that leads us nicely into the exit phase. So early throttle application is a good thing, but we all know how powerful these bikes actually are. And even with all of the aero, they can wheelie incredibly easily. However, once again, professional riders use a small amount of lean angle on the corner exit to keep the bike from wheeling. With some lean angle on the bike combined with the rider keeping their body lower to the ground, it provides a lower centre of gravity, which helps reduce the amount of wheeling the bikes will do. Wheeling is bad because it causes a loss of forward momentum, regardless if they have rider aids like in MotoGP, or no rider aids in things like World Superbike, British Superbike and so on. A loss of forward momentum means a loss of time. So we've gone through every phase of the corner and now we can move on to the straight. But you may be going, how on earth is a rider able to gain any time on the straight by leaning over? Well, remember what we talked about earlier on with the difference in the diameter of the bike's tyre depending on the lean angle. Well, this can make a really big difference on the straight. You can watch it in almost every single race regardless of what series you're watching. Notice when a rider comes out of a corner, they'll stay leant over and will go from one side of the straight back to the other. The last corner onto the main straight at COTA is a great example. By following this S shape on a straight, the rider is keeping the bike on the part of the tyre with a smaller diameter. Even though they're travelling a further distance, the additional acceleration they get from this smaller diameter from leaning over gives them more time. If you're at maximum throttle, you can't add any more. However, by doing this, you're getting more for the same amount of throttle. Clever, isn't it? Due to the change in RPM and engine speed when the bike is leant over, riders will have to adjust their riding style by deliberately shifting into the wrong gear in certain areas to both maximise the benefit and to minimise the potential problems when it happens. This is called short shifting, and it's essentially when the rider will shift before the red line, and it happens mainly in complexes with changes of direction or faster sweeping corners. It's not always useful to ride a bike out to the maximum RPM, and it can result in some awkward gear changes. If you're in the middle of a chicane or a fast change of direction complex, having to shift gears through the second half of that complex is pretty awkward and can cause a crash if you're particularly aggressive. It's the same in faster corners. A gear change when the bike is loaded up momentarily changes the balance of the bike, and that can again cause an accident like a high side, as the change in balance can quickly get out of control. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. First, we'll look at a fast change of direction complex. We're going to be following Jack Miller at Portimao in 2020. Now notice when coming through the right-hander of turn 3 and going into turn 4, Jack upshifts from first to second. This initially is the wrong gear as the revs drop out of the power band. But as soon as he leans over, the revs pick back up and then he's back in the power band. It's a much smoother and more fluid way to get through a complex like that, rather than trying to change in the middle of turn 4. He does the same thing through turn 11 and turn 12. Although it's a little longer between the two corners, the principle is the same. He shifts out of the power band early, but as soon as he leans over into turn 12, the revs pick up. Now it does also help to stop potential wheeling, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Now let's take a look at a faster, more sweeping corner. Nicolo Canepa at Spa is a great example. Take a look at Stavelot. He's in second when he exits turn 14, but then short shifts into third before the entry of turn 15 to keep the bike settled and make sure he's not having to change gear mid-corner. Again, making the corner more fluid and to maximise the time on the exit going into turn 16. So there you go, everything you need to know about why professional motorbike riders lean over at every possible moment. I've started a Discord community which you can join via a link in the description below. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And I want to say thank you so much for watching. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. That didn't record, I swear to God.